Welcome to the first tropical update from Cayman Hurricane Center for 2020. Yes, we're back at it again. We've had a bit of technical issues back in 2018, 2019, thus unable to do these update videos. However, that seemed to have been rectified, and we're planning to be able to produce some for 2020. So here we go. It is the 16th of May, 2020, and we have something to talk about. We have our first system of the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. Tropical Depression number one. Tropical Depression number one started out as a part of an old frontal boundary that stalled out over the far northwestern Caribbean, Florida Straits, Bahamas. The system eventually started to consolidate and get itself better organized as the system then started to cross around Florida, the Florida Straits, and up through the northwestern Bahamas up to this point. There was questions on whether the system would be a subtropical or tropical system. However, it has gotten itself much more organized and able to develop as a fully tropical system. Here we could look at the large-scale view of the Atlantic Basin with our tropical system, and you could definitely see that the system is indeed organizing itself here. On the wide view, you could see definitely a fairly large spiraling system here. And indeed, we do have another system that's through Texas into the Gulf of Mexico. It is probably unlikely that that system will develop anything. Never say never, but the chances are pretty low. However, despite that, the system over Texas and the Gulf of Mexico has been causing quite a bit of flooding over Texas and Louisiana. Just getting back here now to our tropical system. Here's the close-up visible satellite imagery view of our system here. So that it load up here. And as you can certainly see on the visible imagery, the low-level circulation is certainly there and it is becoming better organized. It is still slightly elongated, but that should tighten up over time. But you can definitely see the organization in the low levels there. There is a bit of shear still imparting its way over the system, thus the stretched out look of the convective bands, not being totally consolidated, but it is there and it is blowing relatively to the eastbound of this system. This system will get itself better organized over time. You can see on the low-level vorticity how it has been doing so. Of course, when it started out very much like this system here. This is a non-tropical system in the North Atlantic, and the vorticity was very much stretched out, much like this. However, now, as we could see with our system here, it has tightened up and certainly organized itself into a decent little feature here. So again, we'll be monitoring that as it continues to move generally northwards, northeastwards over the next couple of days. Speaking of the forecast, let's take a look at the forecast cone for this system. And as we can see here, here is the first official cone of the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. And as you could note, there are some differences with the forecast cone here. This is the 3-day cone. One thing to mention is that the National Hurricane Center decided to add in the 36-hour forecast plot point. So it usually, before this, went from 24 to 48 hours to 72, 96, 120, so on and so forth. Now they've added in that extra plot point to make the forecast cone just ever so slightly better with accuracy. And so as we can see here, this is the first official cone, and of course there will be some changes as we do go forwards with the forecast cone. So we'll have to closely monitor this, especially those across the eastern United States. One thing to note, and that is clearly visible here, is that we do have tropical storm watches up for portions of North Carolina. Specifically, we're talking about from Surf City to Duck, including the Pamlico and Albemarle Sound here, the Outer Banks of the Carolinas. Of course, other areas in the surrounding areas, of course, South Carolina, Georgia, down up through Virginia, uh, Delaware, New Jersey. All of these areas here should closely monitor the progress of the system, as there is a chance that the system could be shifting. The forecast cone could be shifting further to the west, as we could see here on the latest forecast model guidance. Actually, the trend has been shifting further and further to the west. And very interesting to note is this very unusual left-hand hook. Of course, we all remember Hurricane Sandy doing very much a similar thing with the left-hand hook into the northeastern United States. Now, not saying that this system will become another Sandy. No, we're not expecting another Sandy here, but it's interesting to note that that forecast tracked by the models indicating from the north-northeast return to a generally west-west-northwest return. So again, from the Outer Banks of the Carolinas all the way up to the northeast should closely monitor the progress of this system as well. And the system could very well intensify further, and we could potentially end up, by the time it reaches by the Outer Banks, I wouldn't surprise me if this thing becomes a very minimal Cat 1 hurricane, certainly. But right now, we're looking at upper end tropical storm at the very least. So again, that pretty much covers it. I'll give the details for the 5 p.m. advisory for this system. And of course, we'll be back later tonight with a further update on this tropical system. Also, keep ears out. We'll be discussing in terms of the hurricane season as a whole later this month, including our Cayman Hurricane Center's seasonal forecast for 2020, so keep an ear out for that. Again, that'll be just before the June 1st start date, official start date of the season. So again, before we end it out here are the particulars as of the 5 p.m. EDT or 21 UTC, 28.4 north, 78.6 west, or about 125 miles east of Melbourne, Florida, or about 505 south-southwest of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Maximum sustained winds 35 miles per hour, present movement to the north-northeast at 13. Minimum central pressure 1,000. Tropical storm watch in effect for the North Carolina coast, north of Surf City to Duck, including the Pamlico and Albemarle Sound. Again, the next advisory will take place at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Again, this is Cayman Hurricane Center. First tropical update. We'll be catching you later tonight.